She pretended to be a customer. What her employees did next changed everything. Alicia Monroe looked up from the espresso display at the front of the boutique electronics store, blinking at the branch manager's narrowed eyes. She wore a flowing green summer dress, her natural curls tucked beneath a wide-brimmed hat, sunglasses still resting on the bridge of her nose. It was a look she'd chosen deliberately, comfortable, inconspicuous, and most importantly, unfamiliar. "No, just browsing," she replied smoothly. The manager didn't bother to hide his irritation. "Then maybe don't loiter so close to the registers. We've had issues." Alicia said nothing. She simply nodded, stepped aside, and pretended to admire a tablet stand she didn't care about. 10 minutes later, she watched a white man in joggers walk straight past the same register, hovering for several minutes while scrolling his phone. The manager walked right past him. No warning. No side eye. Not even a glance. Alicia's stomach tightened, but she didn't move. This was exactly why she'd come in unannounced. Not as the CEO of Vibe Tech. Not with an entourage or security or an assistant whispering stock numbers in her ear. Just as a black woman walking into her own store. She'd heard whispers, complaints buried in customer service surveys, turnover in frontline staff, even a Yelp review that mentioned unfriendly vibes at this location. But nothing she could act on. Not until she saw it herself. And now she had. What happened next would ripple far beyond this one store. But the manager, still muttering about watching the suspicious ones, had no idea he was moments away from making the worst mistake of his career. Alicia moved deeper into the store, past Bluetooth speakers and noise-canceling headphones, her eyes scanning, not just products, but people. 2 young associates were chatting behind the Genius Bar, ignoring a Latino father trying to get help with a cracked phone screen. A white couple had just been offered complimentary water by a third associate. The disparity was impossible to miss. Then came the moment. The manager, Doug, if she remembered correctly from the employee directory, spoke into his radio, voice low but clear. "Security, we've got a possible loitering issue near the home audio section. African-American female, green dress, sunglasses." Alicia blinked. It wasn't just the profiling. It was the casual way he said it. Like it was procedure. Like he had done this before. She turned toward the flat-screen wall, where the newest model TV looped a bright ad. Her reflection stared back at her from the glossy screen. Calm, composed, and simmering with disbelief. She slowly pulled out her phone, typed a quick note, and pressed record. 2 minutes later, a security guard approached. Young. Nervous. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside," he said gently, eyes darting toward Doug, who watched from the register with arms folded. "We've had a complaint." Alicia raised an eyebrow, her voice cool. "A complaint about shopping?" I don't know, ma'am. I'm just following orders." The moment stretched, heavy with unspoken power dynamics. And then, Alicia did something that shifted the air in the room entirely. She pulled off her sunglasses, then her hat, and finally, from her purse, a slim, rose gold ID card. The Vibe Tech corporate crest shimmered beneath the fluorescent lights. "I'm Alicia Monroe," she said, holding it up. "CEO." The security guard's face drained of color. Doug's mouth opened slightly. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "I wasn't loitering," she added, her voice steady. "I was watching." For a moment, the entire store froze. Doug didn't speak. Couldn't. His smug posture collapsed into a stiff, awkward hunch as he tried to process the reality in front of him. The woman he had just profiled, called security on, was not only the CEO of the entire company, but was standing in his store, live recording the aftermath. The security guard muttered, I didn't know. I apologize, Ms. Monroe." "It's okay," Alicia said gently, eyes still locked on Doug. "I know you were following orders." She turned the phone to face Doug now. Not as a threat, but a statement. "You are seen." "Doug, was it?" she asked, voice sharp but composed. He nodded slowly. "Would you like to explain why you called security on a paying customer?" she asked. "Because I was browsing. Quietly. Alone. Not stealing. Not shouting. Not even asking for help." Doug stammered. There was a concern. We've had incidents before and I thought." "You thought what?" Her tone was still calm, but layered with steel. The kind of quiet that fills courtrooms and boardrooms. Doug shrank under it. You thought I looked like the kind of customer who causes problems? She finished for him. Behind them, one of the younger associates had frozen mid-step, eyes wide. The Latino father, now being helped, quickly, urgently, kept glancing over. The whole store was on edge. Doug's voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't know who you were. Alicia let that hang for a second. Then she stepped forward. That's the problem, she said. You didn't know who I was, so you assumed the worst. What if I wasn't the CEO? What if I was just another black woman shopping on her lunch break? Doug said nothing. He looked down. Alicia sighed, slid her phone back into her purse, and turned toward the rest of the store. Eyes followed her like a ripple. This isn't just about one bad decision, she said aloud. It's about a culture, a mindset, and I intend to change it. Doug barely had time to collect himself before Alicia turned to the counter. I'd like the staff gathered in the break room, she said to one of the stunned associates behind the Genius bar. Now. The associate blinked, then scrambled into motion. Alicia didn't wait for Doug's approval. She moved through the store like she belonged there, because she did. Every corner of this location, from the tile floors to the curated playlists, had been part of her vision when she built Vibe Tech from the ground up. She'd once packed boxes in a cramped garage with the first prototypes. Now her name sat on the building lease. Yet here she was, treated like a threat. In the break room, she removed her green dress jacket and stood by the whiteboard as the staff trickled in. Uneasy, silent, glancing at one another. Doug lingered near the door, unsure if he should sit or stand. Don't worry, Alicia said calmly. No one's getting fired today. Doug exhaled. Too soon. But we are going to talk. She looked at the nervous faces around her. A mix of ages, mostly white, a few Latino, one young black man who looked like he wanted to disappear into his hoodie. I walked into this store today pretending to be someone I wasn't, she began. Just a customer. No badge. No assistant. No press release. And what I saw? She paused, scanning the room. Confirmed every suspicion I had. No one spoke. I saw a man ignored while he waited for help. I saw laughter shared with some customers and silence handed to others. And I saw a manager call security, not because of behavior, but because of bias. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I'm not here to humiliate you, Alicia continued. I'm here to fix this. Because this store, our store, will not survive if this is how people are treated when they walk through the door. Eyes dropped. Guilt settled like a fog. Doug tried to speak. Ms. Monroe, if I may. You may not, she said without looking at him. Not yet. Then she turned to the room. But if anyone else has something to say, this is your moment. The room remained heavy with silence, until a soft voice broke it. I noticed it too, said the young black employee, his hands fidgeting in his hoodie pocket. I didn't want to say anything because, well, I'm the only one here who looks like me. Alicia turned to him gently. What's your name? Marcus. Thank you for speaking up, Marcus. He nodded. There've been times customers ask for help and Doug just watches me, like he's waiting to see if I mess up. But I've worked here for 2 years. Never been late. Top in sales last quarter. And still, he looked down. Still feels like I have to prove I belong every day. A murmur of discomfort spread. A few employees looked away. One woman, a white clerk in her early 20s, bit her lip and added quietly, I think I've seen it. I didn't know what to say. Alicia nodded slowly. That's the start of accountability. Not just knowing what happened, but admitting when we chose silence. Doug stood straighter, trying to recover. I treat all my employees fairly. I don't. Doug, Alicia said firmly. This isn't your moment. He froze. She wasn't angry, just resolute. I've reviewed turnover numbers. This store has one of the highest rates of exit for BIPOC employees. And now, I've seen why. Her eyes landed on him now. You thought you were protecting the store. What you did was expose it. Doug's mouth opened, but he closed it again. For once, he had no defense. We don't need more policies, Alicia said to the group. We need people who actually live the values this company was founded on. Respect, innovation, equity. Marcus looked up, and Alicia offered him a nod of quiet affirmation. This moment isn't about just one mistake, she said. It's about what we choose to do next. After a long pause, one of the older employees, Carmen, a Latina woman in her 40s, spoke up from the corner. I've worked here since the grand opening, she said. And honestly, I've seen things. Customers who are followed, others who are pampered. It's subtle, but it adds up. I just kept my head down because I thought nothing would change. Alicia turned to her. Do you still think that? Carmen looked around the room, then back at Alicia. No, not anymore. Alicia let the moment breathe. This, she said, gesturing to the break room, is not how I wanted to meet any of you. But maybe it's the only way change was ever going to happen. Doug shifted uncomfortably. You have a store where some customers feel welcome and others feel watched. That's not a people problem. That's a leadership problem. And leadership starts at the top. Doug opened his mouth again, this time quieter, almost pleading. I didn't mean to offend anyone. I was just doing my job. Then your job needs redefining, Alicia said. Because leadership isn't just about managing inventory and checking schedules. It's about setting the tone, every second, with every person. She stepped forward now, closing the space between her and Doug. You called security on me because I didn't look like a CEO. You profiled a customer because you assumed the worst. That's not ignorance, Doug. That's bias. And it hurts people. It hurts this brand. And it ends today. Doug swallowed hard. So what happens now? Alicia didn't blink. You're suspended. Effective immediately. Corporate HR will follow up by end of day. The room fell into stunned silence. This isn't about making an example of you, Doug, she added. It's about sending a message. That who you are behind the register is just as important as what you sell in front of it. She turned back to the staff. We can rebuild this culture, but only if everyone here is willing to hold each other accountable. No one spoke, but in the silence, something shifted, something real. Later that afternoon, Alicia stayed behind after the staff dispersed. Most had gone back to the floor with a different energy, some cautious, some quietly hopeful. Carmen offered to help the Latino father personally. Marcus took the lead at the Genius Bar. Even the younger associate who had ignored Alicia earlier came up afterward and apologized. I didn't realize, he said quietly, face flushed. I mean, I should have. I didn't look. Alicia met his eyes. Now you will. Doug, meanwhile, lingered near the door like a ghost waiting to be dismissed. His bravado from earlier had completely evaporated. He looked smaller now, not just physically, but in presence. Uncertain, humbled. A man at the edge of a lesson he'd never expected to learn like this. Ms. Monroe, he said finally, I'm sorry. I mean that. She looked at him, her voice level. I believe you regret what happened. But I'm not interested in apologies that come after exposure. I want the kind that show up in the decisions you make before there's a consequence. Doug nodded slowly. If I get a second chance, I'll do better. I swear. Alicia paused. That's not up to me. It'll depend on what HR finds, what the community feedback says, and how you reflect on this moment. But either way, Doug, you won't forget this. And you shouldn't. She stepped past him, pausing only briefly. Bias doesn't need a hood. Sometimes it shows up in khakis and a polo shirt with a name tag. Doug didn't respond. He just stood there, quiet, watching her walk toward the exit. Outside, Alicia pushed open the glass door and stepped into the afternoon sun. She inhaled deeply, sharp, clean air after hours in a store heavy with tension. The truth had come to light. But her work was only beginning. By morning, word had already spread. Someone, likely a staff member, had anonymously posted about the day the CEO walked in disguised on Reddit. Within hours, it was trending under #VibeTechCO. The post was respectful, but honest, describing Alicia's calm confrontation, the suspension of the manager, and how the boss showed up looking like a customer and left looking like a storm. Screenshots flooded social media. She walked in as data, left as evidence. One tweet read. Another, imagine profiling your boss because of her skin. That's racism in action. Alicia read every post. Not for vanity, for confirmation. The world saw what she saw. Not an outburst, not a PR stunt, but a mirror. She drafted a short statement that morning. It wasn't written by legal or crafted by PR. Just her, at her desk, with a black coffee and an open heart. I didn't go to that store to catch anyone. I went to find out if the culture we claim is the culture we live. It wasn't. What happened to me as a black woman happens to others every day, without a title to protect them. This isn't just about Vibe Tech. This is about all of us, how we see, treat, and respect each other. Change doesn't come from punishment. It comes from honesty. And that work begins now. Within hours, her message was reposted thousands of times. Alicia didn't flinch. She welcomed the light. That same afternoon, she scheduled a company-wide call. "We're not hiding from this," she said to her executive team. "We're leading with it." The virtual town hall opened with thousands of muted faces in tiny squares, employees from coast to coast, managers, sales reps, engineers, warehouse staff. Every department logged in, many not knowing what to expect. Alicia appeared on screen without a filter, without a script. Just her. "I know some of you saw the story," she began. "Some of you lived it." She paused, letting the weight settle. What happened at our flagship Grove location wasn't isolated. It was a symptom of bias, of silence, of comfort with the status quo. Her voice didn't tremble. It resonated. For those asking, no, this wasn't a sting. I didn't walk into that store to go viral. I walked in because I kept hearing stories from customers and staff that didn't line up with the values on our posters. She held up one of the company's branded slogans, "Innovation with Empathy." And if this brand is going to mean anything, if my name is going to mean anything, we have to live this for every customer, not just the ones who fit a mold. She outlined a series of changes, one by one. Immediate audits of all customer-facing locations. Anonymous reporting tools with third-party oversight. Quarterly equity and anti-bias training led by outside experts, not internal HR. And the creation of a staff-led equity council with real authority, real budget, and a direct line to her. "This isn't about checking boxes," she said. "It's about rebuilding trust." As the meeting wrapped, a quiet series of claps began rippling across the Zoom screens. Employees who had never spoken up now applauding, some in tears. Because finally, someone wasn't just saying the right thing. She was doing it. The days that followed shook the company from top to bottom. 3 regional managers submitted their resignations, quietly, voluntarily. Not because they were publicly named, but because they knew the mirror Alicia held up could just as easily reflect them. The days of plausible deniability were over. At the Grove location, the atmosphere shifted almost overnight. Customers who had once felt invisible were now being greeted with real warmth. Employees previously sidelined, like Marcus, were invited to lead training sessions. Carmen was promoted to interim branch lead. And Doug? He remained under investigation. But Alicia didn't make him the villain. She made the system visible. And that hit harder. Meanwhile, emails flooded corporate inboxes. A letter from a retired black executive read, "I used to walk into boardrooms and get asked if I was the delivery guy. Watching you hold that store accountable brought something full circle." A Gen Z employee in Oregon wrote, "You made me believe that leadership and integrity can still exist in the same body." Alicia replied to each one herself. Because for her, this wasn't about damage control. This was about reconstruction. The story had gone from a single incident to a company-wide awakening. Media outlets praised her transparency. Advocacy groups called Vibe Tech's model a case study in modern accountability. But Alicia didn't flinch in the spotlight. She knew the light didn't fix things. It simply made them impossible to ignore. 2 weeks later, Doug walked into the downtown office where Alicia was waiting. It wasn't a trap. It was a conversation, one that had been earned, not granted. He sat across from her, eyes lowered, noticeably thinner, his confidence sanded down by reflection. "Thank you for seeing me," he said quietly. "I said I would." Alicia replied, folding her hands. "This isn't about revenge. It's about reckoning." Doug nodded. "I've gone through the training. I've read the internal audit. I even talked with Marcus." Alicia raised an eyebrow. "Did you listen?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "And I realized, I don't just need to unlearn bias. I need to learn how to lead all over again. Alicia studied him, not for performance, but for presence. Was this real? Was it safe to trust? You were part of a system, she said. But you were also a gatekeeper. And gatekeepers shape lives. They shape who gets a second chance, who gets respect, who gets seen. Doug swallowed hard. I want to do better. But I also understand if that means not here. Alicia leaned back. I believe in growth, she said. But growth doesn't erase impact. If you return, it won't be to the same store. You'll start from the bottom, under someone you once supervised, with oversight, with accountability. Doug nodded. That's fair. Then we'll see, Alicia said. Not through words, but through actions. Every day? As he left the room, Alicia didn't feel triumphant. She felt steady, because justice isn't just a verdict. It's a discipline. 3 months later, Vibe Tech's Grove location didn't just look different. It felt different. Carmen now managed the store full-time, her leadership quiet but firm. Marcus had been promoted to diversity lead for the entire region, designing trainings rooted in lived experience, not corporate jargon. Customers began returning not just for the tech, but for the culture. They felt it when they walked in, welcomed, not watched. And Alicia? She still visited stores, but never with fanfare. Sometimes she wore a business suit. Sometimes she wore that same green dress. And each time, employees looked her in the eye, not because they feared her title, but because they saw her humanity. The ripple extended beyond Vibe Tech. Other companies reached out to Alicia for consulting, training, guidance. One national chain restructured its onboarding based on her recommendations. But Alicia wasn't chasing influence. She was cultivating integrity. At the company's annual leadership summit, she stood before a packed room of execs, store managers, and staff. No stage lights, just a mic and a chair. I didn't want to catch anyone, she told them. I wanted to see what we've built. And what I saw, what I felt, was that we still have blind spots. She paused, scanning the room. But we also have vision, courage, people willing to see past what's comfortable into what's necessary. The room rose in a standing ovation, not just for her, but for the standard she'd set. Because Alicia Monroe hadn't just walked into a store one afternoon. She walked into a system, and she walked out with the blueprint to change it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe me and hit the notification bell to not miss new stories. Bye.